Bill Manning, the editor of Fire Engineering, a 125-year-old monthly firefighting trade magazine with ties to the New York City Fire Department, wrote in an editor's opinion piece in the January 2002 issue called Selling Out the Investigation, quote, "Fire Engineering has good reason to believe that the official investigation blessed by FEMA and run by the American Society of Civil Engineers is a half-baked farce that may already have been commandeered by political forces whose primary interest, to put it mildly, lie far afield of full disclosure." End quote. He also called for an immediate stop to the removal of steel from the site of Ground Zero, saying the steel from the site should be preserved as a crime scene so that the investigators can examine what caused the collapse and pass that knowledge on to future generations of engineers. The editorial continues, quote, "A growing number of fire protection engineers have theorized that the structural damage from the planes and the explosive ignition of jet fuel in themselves were not enough to bring down the towers." End quote.
Never before in the history of the world has a steel building collapsed due to fire.
I have not seen, until recently, a protected steel structure that has collapsed in a fire.
True infernos have raged hot and long in steel-framed buildings, but not one of the buildings ever came down. In 1975, the World Trade Center's North Tower suffered a nighttime fire that flamed for 3 hours, spreading vertically from floor to floor. It burned twice as long as the fires of 9/11 without even a hint of a building collapse. In February 2005, the Windsor Tower in Madrid, a skyscraper undergoing reconstruction, sustained a 20-hour fire. This is what was left, a standing building strong enough to support a crane. Compare a 20-hour inferno to 90 minutes of smoke.
What do we do? We made it outside, we made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
detonated. If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
Like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden 3 big explosions.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
I go downstairs, the foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor, and that's when everything started happening. You know, something else hit us to the floor. Right in the basement, you felt it. Walls were caving in, everything that was going on. I mean, I know people that got killed in the basement. I know people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face. And I know, I love seeing everybody every day that survived it and was there. And I just hear everybody's story, and it was terrible, no matter where you were in that building.
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang.
This huge, incredible force of wind and debris actually came up the stairs, knocked my helmet off, knocked me to the ground.
Rick Sanchez has been there throughout this morning for us. Rick, tell us where you are and what the latest is.
Well, I'm in that area, if you're familiar with this area, of where West Broadway and Hudson come together. Right at Chambers. That would put us about a block and a half away from the site of where the explosion was. That area has just been evacuated because police have found what they describe as a suspicious device, and they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. Obviously, there's a real sense of caution here on the part of police. I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center, aside from the ones that may have been caused by the impact of the plane with the building, may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area, and that's why they're being so cautious.
We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. Big explosion. The 8th floor. It just went ba-boom. It was like a bomb went off. And it was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, they were coming out on a mezzanine level there, and another explosion came right from it. Just everything went flying right in front of me. Everything just went boom.
Finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
That close to the building, an explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
We were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway. There was a heavy-duty explosion, and everybody just started running for the door. Everybody was trapped. Eventually, when the dust lifted, I saw some light and started screaming for everybody to go out towards the light.
Saw from street level as though it had exploded up, a giant rolling ball of flame, and the firefighters screamed, "Run!"
We just heard another explosion.
Much of the buildings continue to fall into the street. When you're down there, Dan, you hear smaller secondary explosions going off every 15 or 20 minutes.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last. Cars just turned by the force of the explosions.
The bottom of our building was blown out.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions, 3 thuds, and turned around to see the building we just got out of, antenna tip over and fall in on itself.
What do you got up there, Steve? I'm still in voice stairway, 74th floor, no smoke or fire problem. The walls are breached, so be careful. Yeah, 10-4, I saw that on 68. Freddie, come on over. Freddie, come on over by us. Guys, we got... Hey, Riding Force 1-5. We got police, isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor, numerous 1045 call horns. What scan are you in, Mario?
Never before in history has a steel-framed high-rise building collapsed simply because of fire. On 9/11, by coincidence, 3 such buildings collapsed within 10 to 16 seconds. Almost free fall speed. In other words, if you had dropped a brick from the top of the World Trade Center, it would have taken about that time to hit the ground. If fire could even conceivably bring down steel-framed buildings, but bring them down very slowly. The steel would bend and fall this way and that way. It would be a very slow process. The pictures that we see are consistent with what is called controlled demolition. When a company fills a building with explosives, times the explosives in just the right way to bring the building straight down into its own footprint. And that's what we see with all 3 buildings.
After burning for 53 minutes,
The South Tower collapsed in 11 seconds.
And Stanley said to me, he said, you know, I think those buildings could go over. And I said, there's no way. I said, those are steel structures. I said, that's furniture and paper and carpeting and draperies and things like that.